Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Manic Mondays. I am your host, Miraznetti, and it's time to dip your toe in that retro nostalgic pool. And of course, to discuss the continuation of our 2004 legacy is Steve Neal.
Yes, baby. Age of Orton and Redacted and Eddie Guerrero, among others. Randy Orton. Look at his pecs. And it brings us nicely, so-called nicely, to our first WrestleMania that we've covered on Manic Mondays. And we're starting off at WrestleMania 20, where it all starts again. The shittest tagline of all time. WrestleMania 20, Madison Square Gardens, away from the big, stadiums and the huge arenas to a much smaller and more intimate arena, but obviously a very historic arena as well in MSG. So, man, let's pop our WrestleMania cherry.
You haven't lived, you haven't breathed until you've danced at WrestleMania.
Tonight will be like no other. Tonight is the showcase of the immortals. They will achieve the impossible and forge new beginnings. Tonight, men will hunt down their dreams. Tonight, no one holds back. And tonight is where it all begins. Again.
Oh, baby. I can't believe it's taken almost 3 years to get around to our WrestleMania. WrestleMania 20, SD says, for Madison Square Garden. 18,500 people. One of the smallest WrestleManias in recent memory, actually, because other than this one, from WrestleMania 17 onwards, they are all done in massive, massive arenas, I believe. Other than, actually, I believe WrestleMania 21 is done in the Staples Center in Los Angeles. I think that's only got about 20,000. But this is a bit of a change of pace in terms of WWE, especially as the last three were done in huge arenas. Obviously, the Houston Astrodome, Toronto Skydome, even WrestleMania 19, I believe, was in Seattle in that monstrous baseball stadium. But normally, Madison Square Garden, of course, it hosted the first, it hosted the 10th. Now it hosts the 20th.
Didn't host the 30th, though, did it?
No, it didn't, no.
He got bored of that because he saw the money.
I was going to say money. Vince McMahon was like, well, I'm doing that. It's not enough money. Those Australians aren't bringing in enough. Fuck them. Boomerang loving shit. So, yeah, it's WrestleMania 20. How do you open up a WrestleMania? Marquee match, of course. So it's time for the Doctor of fucking Alex. The United States title is on the line. Big Show defends against John Cena. Before he was the 5 moves of doom, he actually had 7. Very impressive, John. Very impressive.
Yeah, Big Match Johnny was born at WrestleMania 20. As he overcomes the Big Show and becomes the United States champion. He obviously does a little, jokey promo at the start. Oh, John. Basically talking about the fact that Big Show's really big. Oh, the invention of this man knows no bounds. The creative genius of John Cena talking about how the Big Show is really big it was outstanding. 10 out of 10. Promo work, absolutely incredible. It changed my life, to be honest. I think it might be the greatest promo I've ever seen.
I'm detecting a slight level of facetiousness.
Fuck me, this match was absolute ball sweat.
Now is WrestleMania here to represent? Then let me hear everybody make some noise.
Is what this match was. It was the perspiration dripping from a perineum. It was fucking awful. I enjoyed the finish with John Cena distracting the referee as if he was going to use his thugonomics chain and actually using some brass knucks to smack Big Show in the face, deliver a second FU, not the AA. This is pre-PG. It's the FU. To pick up the 3 count. And, it was really, really shit. Thoughts?
So, Steve, you think you're untouchable? What a fucking word life! This is basically fucking every time it plays, I feel like a small part of you either gets more enraged or dies inside.
No, it dies.
Every At the end of this podcast, you'll be like, I'm done. Bye, WrestleMania. Thank you too much of you. You would have faded away like an Avenger. It would have just slowly
This is a
disappeared.
Thanos click, just a slow motion Thanos click.
The end of WrestlePlug will be Steve cosplaying as Spider-Man going, I feel so cold, Tony. In my arms, he'll just dissipate into nothing. And then John Cena will forever be known as the Thanos of WrestlePlug. I like Doctor of Thugonomics to a point. This was not a very good match. I gave it 2.5 just because of the crowd and because of the marquee value of what it was. Ultimately, the wrestling match itself was a 1.5. But I try and sort of think my rating system, so to speak, which, by the way, is not nearly as important as Dave Meltzer's, and I don't care about his either, is based around everything. I try and lob everything in, the sort of spectacle of it, what it means, etc., etc. I remember watching it the first time round, the day after WrestleMania 20. My mate had recorded it on tape, bless him, and he brought it round, and we all sat down, like loads of us, a good 7 or 8 of us all sat in my front room and just watched it. And it was shit hot for us at the time, and we were, 19? So,
yeah.
It seemed good at the time, and I remember thinking, oh my God, John Cena lifted up the Big Show and FU'd him for the US title. So cool, that guy's going to be a star. Oh, little did we know. But ultimately, it's tedious. It really is. The line that got me, which I can just hear you be like, shut up, Cena, was just when he went, everybody knows he can't see me. I'm itching to beat him like a penis with an STD. I was like, yeah.
What does that even mean?
Yo, everybody knows that he can't see me. I'm itching to beat him like a penis with an STD.
You're going to beat it as if, like, if you had a gonorrhea-riddled cock, you'd just be smashing it about. Just be literally beating your herpes dripping with pus dick until it falls. That's nonsense. Nonsense. It doesn't make any fucking sense. He just wanted to say penis and STD at WrestleMania. Well done, John. You're such an inspiration to the kids, John. Fucking Make-A-Wish this, you prick.
Oh, Lord. It's got this great image of John Cena just ferociously whipping his dick against the door, like, get rid of the itch, get rid of it.
Killing the crabs one by one.
Incredible. Absolutely. What an opener to WrestleMania. Just 4 more hours, ladies and gentlemen. Coachman backstage schmoozing, and he's told by Eric Bischoff, who is flanked by an incredibly young Johnny Nitro. Wow, he looks like a fresh boy. Go and find The Undertaker. And Orton's backstage, recounting all the memories of Mick Foley and stuff. Actually, not too bad a promo.
It's so long.
It's perfect.
You're going to have a vignette. You're going to have a vignette in a bit. What do I need this promo for? Like, it's just literally recanting the entire history of Mick Foley and Randy Orton for the last 6 months, which is fine. But we're going to get a vignette. What's the point of the fucking promo? Do you remember when I threw you down these stairs, Mick? Rick standing there just nodding in silence. Mm-hmm. Yes. I don't know what's going on. Where's the cocaine? I was promised there'd be cocaine if I stood at the top of these stairs.
It's like Pam and Archer. Where's the fucking coke?
Just eating a cocaine body cast of herself.
Oh, minus however much Pam ate, probably 2 kilos. Or 3 or whatever.
Quit eating all the goddamn cocaine.
Make me.
Oh, fucking incredible. Yeah, what makes me laugh as well is he's like, oh, do you know what? I'm sick and tired of people like Mick Foley and The Rock. They're old has-beens. Yeah, Ric Flair standing next to him. What? Like, no, just terrible. However, if you thought that was bad, it's time for the first of 2 sudden death fatal 4-way matches. As if fatal isn't a bad enough word. We need sudden death in there as well.
It's a 4 corners match. 4 corners match. What a sudden death. What does that even mean?
Is that your career will be dead after this match. And I'm free. Sudden death fatal 4-way tag team match for the WWF Tag Team Championships. Booker T and RVD defend their championships against La Resistance, Rob Conway and Rene Dupree, Mark Jindrak and Garrison Cade, and Jorts Are Still Supreme Dudley Boys. This is shit. This match is shit. The only thing that I like about this match is when RVD goes slightly berserker because he probably hasn't smoked enough weed, and he just for some reason goes on this mental like House of Fire, just takes out like 8 guys, like boom, 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 just starts hitting all these cool moves. I'm like, oh, that's awesome, and then it just goes back to that tedious, dumb redundancy of, oh, turns out there aren't actually many very good wrestlers in this match. La Resistance was shit. Martin Jack and Garrison Cade had about as much fucking charisma as the STT flying off of fucking John Cena's phallus. And as far as the Dudley Boys go, I'm not taking you seriously when you wear yellow camouflage. Go fuck yourself. Yellow camouflage.
High vis camouflage.
like Bob Ray camouflaging in anything, much less tulips. Behave yourself. Like he's gonna fucking wave around as a buttercup and nobody's gonna notice his amorphous self. Go back to beating up fucking children in Ring of Honor, you cretin. Noise the shit out of me. This tag team match was bollocks, mate. I gave it 2 because it was just feeling reasonably generous. I've written down here, boring, unimaginative, especially considering it's WrestleMania. Felt like a pre-Raw recording warm-up match. You know, when you go to watch a live show and they have a recorded match, like a pre-recorded match. Like, I think the last Raw I went to was Heath Slater versus Zack Ryder. I think it was the warm-up match. That's what this is. I don't want to see this on my fucking screen. What a waste of... It's WrestleMania 20, the biggest WrestleMania ever, where it all begins again. Fucking tag team division has gone... Well, obviously it hasn't evolved much, has it? It's gone all the way back to the beginning. What a load of shit. Absolute dog shit. Even at this point, I felt like the Dudleys were done. They felt like they were done, you know? Like, they had their heyday of 99, 2000, 2001. They are done. I'll tell you what, without the Hardys and without Edge and Christian, they look well out of their depth, actually. And now that I think about it, as legendary as they are, they were fucking tedious. And Booker T and RVD are above this fucking nonsense. But even this point, you think Booker T's not got that much longer left in him. He kind of rejuvenated himself with King Booker, and RVD's a bit stoned and a bit worse for wear. And the funny thing is, Booker T and RVD, their 2 biggest title reigns in WWE, are still to come a couple of years later in 2006, 2007. And here they just also the state of that fucking music.
Yeah, that's it, man. And a combined weight of 495 pounds, the World Tag Team Champions.
What the fuck is... Can you dig it? What the fuck is that? Shitty, amorphous, sweaty, unevolved glob that fucking Jim Johnson shot out of his penis the day before and thought, that'll do. That'll fuck off, Jim Johnson. Fuck off, tag team division. Shit.
Yeah, I forgot that Booker T and RVD were a thing. It just shows that Vince McMahon has never had any respect or enjoyment for tag team wrestling. The amount of times he just throws 2 singles guys together that he doesn't quite have anything else better to do with, but are there over. Right, throw them together, put them in a tag team, have them win the tag belts, and we'll just keep them there for a bit. Why? It's waste of time, waste of energy, hated it. Yeah, I just forgot they were a thing. And as you say, the thing with the Dudleys was, you know, the Hardys had got to the end of their shelf life, split up, and had gone on to showcase the fact they were both, you know, credible solo talents. Edge and Christian had done the same before that. And the Dudleys had kind of kept going. And they did split up and they did do some individual bits. And obviously, Bubba Ray did slightly better. But that was mostly outside of WWE. Inside WWE, they predominantly, very much for the most part, being a tag team. And it's just they never really allowed them to evolve the gimmick. It still involved like tables and stuff. It was just without like we want tables was the chant within 4 seconds of a match that isn't a tables match. And you know when it's like bored of seeing that now. Like it wasn't even a nostalgia feel. It's just a this is still going on. This is really boring sort of thing. Yeah, no, hated it. Just shit, pointless. Booker T and RVD retained. They pinned Conway. No one cares.
Rob Conway. It's not even just look at me, Rob Conway. It's just I'm a French sympathiser, Rob Conway.
French sympathiser. No one even knows what that means. I sympathise with a giant economy.
Like, he's super green. He's like 18, 19 at this age. Like, Jesus Christ. Like, he's, yeah. Like, to say, I mean, he's currently on the indie scene and he's pretty good now. And he's still in his early 30s, which tells you everything you need to know. You're like, how are you still? Never mind. Just the ageless Rene Dupree. Fucking pointless. I would have rather watched old people mating, which is lucky for me because Jonathan Coachman found 4 of them doing just that backstage. Coachman's like, where are those noises coming from? And he goes up to this big old maintenance sliding door, and as he opens it, out stumbles the legendary combination of Mean Gene and Bobby the Brain Heenan, looking a little bit haggard. And when he inquires further as to what they're doing, out pops Mae Young and Moolah, covered in God knows what, and I don't want to know either, but they were feeling very frisky. Poor Bobby Heenan, Jesus, man. Like, at this point, I believe he'd just gotten over a severe bout of cancer, which obviously needed reconstructive surgery for his jawline and things like that. It was a really bad situation for Bobby the Brain Heenan, and then he's chucked in a dark room with these cretins. It's like, oh dear. It was funny, though. It was funny. Bobby the Brain Heenan and Mean Gene can sell anything. That's what I love about those two. Obviously, Bobby the Brain Heenan had gone into the Hall of Fame the night before as well, so that was quite nice. But it was a welcome break from some terrible wrestling.
It was actually probably my favourite segment of the night, to be honest. Bobby the Brain Heenan's just brilliant. Like, he can do anything and everything. I can't remember who it was, but someone from the business doing an interview or whatever, saying that you will not find a job that he didn't do brilliantly in the world of wrestling, whether it was announcing, whether it was being a wrestler, whether it was being a manager, whatever it was, he just nailed everything. Everything that he turned his hand to, he was brilliant at, which is just completely true. And something that we've said before when we talked about him. So it was great to see him back on screen, and good, really good stuff. It was just good, entertaining, classic nonsense. It was funny.
It's something that's needed, like in a long pay-per-view like this. You need breaks, and it was needed. Chris Jericho versus Christian. For the adoration and love of another Canadian, Trish Stratus. Whoa. I bet you I can bang her first. Oh yeah. It's just very schoolyard bullshit, and I think very indicative of the times that Vince McMahon still thinks we're in that schoolyard horseshit 90s period where it's like, I can date it before you can. Nah, I bet you $50 you can't. Nah. It's like, these are two of the preeminently hottest charismatic wrestlers you have in Christian and Chris Jericho. Wow, they really special. Obviously, Edge is not around at this moment. He's currently rehabbing his neck, although he will be coming soon. This is interesting. This match is good, actually. I like this match. This is, I was so grateful for this match because I was sitting here thinking, this is going to be really, really bad, this show. This is going to be terrible. And these two come along as per usual and put in a shift for the boys. It's not a world beater by any means, but it's a good match. It's a good shift. Just lovely to see. Two wrestlers who know each other, who can work well. The storyline, however, is quite flim-flam. It's very flimsy, actually, at best. And that's a big problem when especially Trish Stratus at this point was smoking hot as well. We're not talking about sort of busty but useless Trish. We're talking about highly athletic and highly saucy Trish. At this point, Steve Neal has fully evolved as a man. And he's Trish Stratus. You want to talk about beating a penis like an STD? Jesus Christ. Steve was fucking beating his like a fucking starboard fucking hit from a torpedo, mate. Never mind anything else. Destroyed it. I mean, he was fine as fuck. Just saying. But this match is great. I gave it 3.5 stars. I really enjoyed this match. But it's good solid technicality, and I like the ending because ultimately it keeps Chris Jericho face. I thought Chris Jericho came across quite sweet for once in this thing. He's just like, look, Trish, like, I actually really like you. I'm sorry it started off as bad. Now I really like you. And then Christian's like, haha, she's my hoe now. He's like, yeah, bros before hoes. Then right at the end, he's like, actually, I'd throw her a bone, definitely. And apparently she likes it a little bit rough as well with the hair pull. The whole thing was oddly sexual and yeah, pretty much. Just seeing Trish Stratus getting the hair pull from Christian and macking off of him, and you're thinking, God damn, Canada, you have really done the wrestling world justice. Well, at least until the main event. Chris Jericho vs. Christian, thoroughly enjoyable. Really liked it, actually. Really good fun match.
Yeah, it's a good fun match. Is kind of how I summed it up. It was they start off with a collar and elbow tie up, despite it being a blood feud, but they do it properly in the fact that it feels violent, like they're both just trying to get their hands around each other's necks, and there's force behind it, and they're trying. It's just really good. It's really well done. It's a great told story. It's aggressive all the way through, and as you say, the storyline around it is soap opera nonsense. I was just waiting for Bobby Lashley to come out and start railing Trish in the corner. But it was done very well. And at the end, the selling of it in the end was by, Trish looking like she feels horrible for costing Jericho the match, and Christian running away like a little scolded dog, and then sort of coming back in as if he's going to batter Trish, and Trish ended up battering Jericho. It was all done really well. They all sold it magnificently well. Like, the acting side of it was done great by all three. And as you say, these are three of the all-time greats. And you could see that. And Christian, man, he's just so underrated. He's so underappreciated and underrated for how good a worker he was. And him going to TNA is one of the reasons why I switched to watching a lot of TNA in that time, when he went over and was Christian Cage. Yeah, awesome. I really enjoyed this match. As you say, compared to what we'd had going up to this, it was just, oh, thank Christ. Thank Christ we're getting these two, because we know we can rely on them. It doesn't matter about the bullshit leading into it. It's WrestleMania. It's Madison Square Garden. They're going to deliver, and they did. Yeah, really, really good stuff.
Yeah, the welcome break, actually, that we needed after a fun little segment backstage as well. Good match. Really enjoyed it. Like I said, 3.5 stars. Mick Foley backstage hyping up his match, and he's interrupted by The Rock, who has apparently had all the coke that Ric Flair is waiting for.
Yeah.
Like, where's the
hijacked Flair's coke train?
He's gone mental. Try the chicken nuggets, you fat son bitch.
Whoa, Mick Foley! Mick Foley, you talk about the emotion. You gotta let the emotion go. Let it go. Because Mick Foley, The Rock, hasn't said this in a long time, but finally, The Rock has come back to New York City! That's what I'm talking about, Mick Foley. And The Rock says this: finally, Mick Foley has come home. Mick Foley, hey, Lillian, no. What are you doing? Look at the people's package, Lillian. No. The buffet is closed. You see, Mick Foley, this is your night. This is your night. The Rock knows it. Lillian knows it. Hell, the camera crew knows it. Let The Rock show you. Come here. Come around the corner. Oh, look, we got the Hamburglar and Grimace. They know it. Put the hamburger away. Try the chicken McNugget, you best son bitch. Look at this right here. We got two legends. The Superfly Jimmy Snuka, Don Morocco. They know it. Follow The Rock. You see, Mick Foley, you see. And above all else, the people know it.
Classic Rock fare. At this point, you're thinking, wow, this pay-per-view could be quite good. We had that fun little moment with Heenan and that. We had the nice warm-up. It should have started with Chris Jericho and Christian, really, shouldn't it? That should have been the opener, being honest. And then we've got this build-up, of course, to a handicap match. It's Evolution. Oh, baby. I wet myself every time I hear it. Versus the Rock and Sock Connection. 3-on-2 handicap match, might I add. I'm curious to see what you think of this match, actually. So I'm going to give you the floor, sir.
I liked it for the most part as a sports entertainment match. Flair, The Rock, Orton, Foley, Batista as well. All good sports entertainers, really. And yeah, I thought it was a fun and enjoyable jaunt through. It kind of keeps The Rock looking strong. He never takes the pin because, there's no reason to do that, but fair enough. Randy goes over and he goes over Mick Foley. You get that RKO out of nowhere kind of moment. It's still very early on, obviously, in Randy's career. He's the IC champ going into this, so you don't have the IC belt defended at WrestleMania, which always makes me a little bit just to kind of shoehorn in an exhibition match to all intents and purposes. The Flair and Rock interactions were gold every time. Like, Flair goes to do the people's elbow, but as a Flair strut, The Rock nipping up, knocking him down, hitting the people's elbow, but with the Flair strut, and it's just really good entertainment, silly shit. The one thing that I would have said that the one spot that I thought was ill-judged or mistimed, should I say, was Foley did the Cactus Jack elbow drop to the outside on Ric Flair, which is all well and good, but he did it like 3 minutes into the match, and it used to be his finisher in WCW. And then they roll Flair in, and Flair just kind of gets up and begs for mercy because The Rock's the legal man. Like, they don't even put that into a pin-in predicament. It's a very minor thing, but it bugged me, especially since Foley's like 112 at this point and has got one working bone in his body. And he just dropped himself square on his hip on the outside for the 9,000th time. And you just sort of think, well, it was a spot that didn't really get that much of a pop. Like, him doing bang bang afterwards got the pop, but the actual move itself didn't really get a reaction from the crowd. So I just felt that it was the wrong time. It should have been done maybe later in the match because it's a big spot and it was glossed over. But for the most part, I thought it was a perfectly fun WrestleMania sports entertainment presentation. I thought it was pretty good.
I fucking loved it, actually.
Yeah.
Really surprised by it. I remember it not being that good, and actually it was better than I thought. I popped so hard for that elbow spot, but I do agree, like, looking back at it, why is that so early in the match? Why is it just a spot? It was so cool as well, because it was like the combination, like Rock hits him and then immediately comes out of
and he flies out of nowhere. It's not like, do 9 camera cuts. He just literally just appears. I'm like, whoa, shit.
The camera work is immense, because he's literally just explodes off the screen, a bit like they used to do sometimes with RVD and his 5-star frog smash. He just land out of nowhere, like Jesus, and it was like very impactful. And I like that. Really like the statement. I love this match. It's so well worked. It's so well thought out. You could tell these guys have put a lot of work into making it right and getting the spots right. And it was very choreographed in places. But I gave this 4 out of 5. This is how much I liked it. And the reason I've given it 4 out of 5 is exactly for something you alluded to. And it was the first thing you nailed it for. And it shows how in sync we are at times with these things. I put 4 out of 5 for a sports entertainment spectacle. Phenomenal. From a sports entertainment standard, this is the match you want. This would not have been out of place being much higher in the card. This could have main evented some of your smaller pay-per-views easily. Like, I wouldn't, this could have been the main event or something like that. Like, maybe WrestleMania a bit of a stretch, but look at the star power involved. One of the all-time greats in Ric Flair. The Rock is kind of just coming off. He's getting away from it. The one thing as well that I noticed from the crowd overall was they weren't very hot for a lot of stuff, actually. The crowd wasn't nearly as rabid as we think it was. And they weren't as receptive to The Rock as much as they were beforehand, because he's the movie star now. He's the guy who's kind of moved away from wrestling. He's just coming back for the quick jaunt. He had that terrible match with Goldberg in 2003, and then that was pretty much it. And then now he's just Rock. I'll pop back every now and then to make an appearance. And this, I believe, is his last wrestling match before he actually faces John Cena many, many years down the line at WrestleMania 28. In their once in a lifetime match. They ended up being twice in a lifetime, which is always good. And this was his last sort of full match, as far as I'm aware. Other than maybe
match, maybe.
I was just about to say that. Yeah, there was the tag match. Was that before the first or the second match?
I think it was before the first, wasn't it? Because the Miz and Cena were in the match that Rock refed WrestleMania the year before, wasn't it?
It's 2011, I think, that match, Survivor Series. So. Yeah, so you're thinking 6 or 7 years removed, and this is the kind of last. This is, as far as I'm aware, from what little fact checking I have done, just going back through the memory. This seems to be the last match I remember The Rock having, at least a full match anyway. It's a great match actually, and looking back at it, I wish The Rock had left the memories alone and left it here. This was a really good way to walk away, with his longtime friend and ultimately his only real tag partner that he ever had.
Yeah.
Foley as well. He'd had tag matches, but this was the only guy that he loved enough to want to be a tag champion with as well. Let's not forget they were tag champions when they knocked off Undertaker in a Big Show, which is a big fucking deal. It was quite cool. It was quite emotional. I liked it, and I love seeing Ric Flair versus The Rock. You forget how iconic that actually is as a match.
Yeah.
Jesus, Ric Flair versus The Rock. Great. Fucking awesome. Their interactions really were the highlight of this match, actually. But everyone put in a great shift, which is what I love. It wasn't a case of, there's The Rock, and then everyone else is just working around him. Everyone got their shit in, put in a good shift, entertained the hell out of the crowd. This was, for me, one of the best matches of the night, actually. I thought it was so well put together. The storyline was phenomenal. We're going to get a continuation out, which is lovely, and Randy Orton and Mick Foley. So it's not like, Rock comes in and he steps aside. Everything worked beautifully. The build-up, the story, it just works. 4 out of 5. Thought it was absolutely immense.
Yeah, completely agree. And with it being a tag match, it kind of covered over, because Batista's still quite green at this point and stuff, but it covers over that. You don't notice it in the way that you do in, in a singles match or in a straight up tag match, with it being the 3-on-2 and it, kind of being a bit of a spot fest at times. He could get away with, right, but I'll just stick to the power stuff, the basics that I do really, really well and continue to learn. So, yeah, really, really good. Really enjoyed it.
Time for a bit of carny nonsense. You've had far too much fun. This WrestleMania is all about giving you some good shit and then pissing all over you. So yeah, after that, 4 out of 5 sports entertainment spectacle. It's time for your Hall of Fame class of 2004. They parade them out. Won't really talk about it too much, but a hell of a class actually. Big John Studd, Don Morocco, Superstar Billy Graham, Sergeant Slaughter, Bobby Heenan, Greg the Hammer Valentine, Harley Race, Jesse the Body Ventura, Tito Santana, Arriba, Junkyard Dog, and Pete Rose in the celebrity wing.
How many of those are dead now, man? It's terrifying, really.
In its own right, a couple of them were already dead coming into it. Yeah, I think, wow. I'm actually looking through this list, and I'm pretty sure. I mean, I think Jesse Ventura is still alive. Tito Santana is still alive due to working incredibly hard. Pete Rose is, but then Junkyard Dog's passed away. Greg the Hammer Valentine, Harley Race, Bobby Heenan, God rest his soul. It's quite
still around.
Yeah, which is horrifically ironic when you consider what we're talking about and what we're going to be talking about later as well. So but a hell of a card anyway. I don't really enjoy watching them paraded out, but I understand why they do it at the same time. I just think, you got your Hall of Fame ceremony, and the reason this one is so stacked, of course, is because WrestleMania 20, it's got to be an extra bit special, so they got an extra few in, and they did a good job in that respect. So, you enjoying your wrestling, buddy? You like wrestling, Steve? Because nothing gets more technical than the first ever Playboy evening gown match. Tori Wilson and Sable versus Miss Jackie and Stacy Keibler. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, the whole premise behind this match is you wrestle in an evening gown, which of course is immediately thrown out the window because Sable's back with her wonderful voice, by the way, and I've got to remove all of my clothes.
She's got a deeper voice than Brock Lesnar, her husband.
She really has.
Put that out there.
Definitely got a bigger penis than him as well. The roids! All the roids! Do you know what I have written down here? Fuck off. That's all I have written down in my entire notes is fuck off. This is a shit car crash, and no amount of sexiness is going to save it. It's terrible. It's a fucking atrocious match, and it's made worse by Taz and Michael Cole being unbelievably correct. This is where do you know what? We were speaking on the last couple of pay-per-views. Taz and Michael Cole actually not too bad. Do their job. They're all right, This is where I've had enough already of Taz. Fuck off, Taz. Annoying cretin. This was shit. I don't want to talk about it. It's rubbish. Pointless. It is just embarrassing. I honestly thought we couldn't stoop to a lower level. We've had some pretty terrible things, haven't we? We went over that thing with the bra and panties match. This is worse for me. And this is on a card that has 2 legitimately famous technical women's workers who really helped to kickstart an evolution of women's wrestling later down the line, wrestling for the women's championship, and you got this hot garbage. Fuck yourself.
Yeah, so it becomes a lingerie match just for no reason, and one of the real jarring things to see is, so Miss Jackie says, look, I'm not partaking in it if it's that. I'll wrestle in the evening gown match, but I don't want to be in a lingerie match. So she is forcibly stripped to the cheers of 18,000 people in Madison Square Gardens to force her to partake. She also eats the pin, which is basically her having her leg spread while Stacy Keibler sits on her face, which everyone's like, there's just people masturbating in the front row at this point. The fucking commentary, Taz is jumping around behind the table. Michael Cole goes, ow, you stabbed me in the leg with your pencil. And Taz goes, ha, that wasn't my pencil. Oh my God, what is going on? We're literally saying the commentators are humping each other with how horny they are over the... They do the referee kind of being knocked down and then the women having a cat fight where they roll over him. The same spot. that Stacey Keibler and Tori Wilson did in the Alliance angle when they had a fucking bra and panties match that we've covered. Probably the same referee. I think it might have been, actually. Just loads of scantily clad roll-ups, basically. That was what the match was. Just them transitioning from roll-up to roll-up in their pants. Like, it's just a complete pointless load of nonsense. And it is like the bit where Miss Jackie is just stripped for the crowd to cheer when she says she doesn't want to take her clothes off. Like, it's actually horrendous. It's really rapey. It's so bad. That would just never, ever happen today. And the crowd are loving it. They're booing her for saying she doesn't want to take her clothes off and cheering when she gets her clothes torn off by 3 rabid women. And they try and play it as well as like, oh, it's an interpromotional match. This is Raw versus SmackDown. Mate, this really isn't. That's got nothing to do with this. These are the 4 women who have got good bodies, who are happy to, wrestle in their pants. Like, it's just, look, they got on the card, they got their payday. It's not a criticism of these women at all, but the way that it's booked, it's just horrible. It's really bad to watch back.
Yeah, I'm not talking about shit. It's terrible. There's no point. Absolutely no point. Backstage, the state of the British fans.
Mate, this is a really international WrestleMania. There's people here from Japan, Australia, China. Let's go and speak to some of them now. 3 guys from Birmingham, a bloke from London, and someone from Bristol. Like, what? They've all travelled here together, mate.
Everybody,
some Irish lads.
Yeah, they're all Irish. Like, they were talking about, and it's just like, yeah, but only speak to the ones who can actually speak audible English. And even then, the Brummies. I mean, come on, man.
Yeah.
To
I assume that it was a young Trent Seven. I assume that anyone who's a Brummie is Trent Seven.
It's him. Like, that's what he looked like before he broke out into wrestling.
Before he grew the beard.
Very jarring and hilarious. Eddie Guerrero is backstage with Redacted, and he's hopping for the main event. Just firing up, pretending he doesn't believe in him when he actually does. Just this kind of
Benoit believes in Bo Dallas.
There's a lot of bees in there. There's something very... Do you know what? All the feelings aside, and obviously we know what happens in the future, this proved that Eddie Guerrero was infinitely better than Chris Benoit as not only a wrestler, but also as a character. Because Benoit was like, oh, you don't believe in me. Eddie Guerrero's like, sí, mamacita. He's like proper, like, he's full of his energy. He's so fiery and Latin and exciting. He was just so entertaining. And then there's Chris Benoit. You don't believe in me. It's like Bobby.
He was a charisma vacuum.
Yeah, he really was. He had nothing, literally nothing in terms of charisma. It's just actually kind of sad. But the crowd believe at this point, so I guess so do we. Eddie Guerrero made his name, of course, very famously, in the Cruiserweight division in WCW, and that's where we are now. Segway! The first ever WrestleMania first Cruiserweight Open full stop, but this one's at WrestleMania 20. A Cruiserweight Open, so Royal Rumble style rules, except everybody's down at ringside. Well, actually, no, Gauntlet rules, excuse me. But everyone's down at ringside, so... Chavo Guerrero, as champion, basically gets the opportunity to wrestle last, such is the prerogative of the champion. I like how Michael Cole gives out about that. It's always like, hey, he went to Paul Heyman and win. So I was like, well, to be fair, he is champion. He should get some sort of advantage, surely. Like, I don't really have a huge problem with that. What I do have a problem with is the plethora of wank stains that he's wrestling. Who are these people? So, Nunzio, and Jamie Noble, Tajiri, Akio, who you might ask? I'll tell you who. Jimmy Wang Yang. That's who that is. Well hidden. Funaki, Shannon Moore, Ultimo Dragon, Jesus, Billy Kidman, Rey Mysterio. So at least the last 3 were highly credible. Fair play. All these guys, with the exception of a couple, are actually reasonably competent wrestlers. This is basically a cruiserweight title clusterfuck. We don't want to give you any serious match, so 2 guys start in the ring. Every time one's eliminated, another one jumps in until...
Winner stays on. It's like Mario Kart rules.
Knock out Wembley. Absolutely, it is very much like Mario Kart. I love it. Yeah, Winners Day's on, ladies and gentlemen, for the cruiserweight title. It's all right. It's all right. There's plenty of spots. No psychology to speak of, really, other than Tajiri accidentally hitting Akio with a mist, and Akio doesn't even get in the match because of that. Ultimately, Chavo retains with an assist from his dad. So it is what it is. One of the highlights for me, actually. Well, first of all, they edited out Ultimo Dragon slipping up on the stage, which really annoyed me. And then slipping getting in the ring as well. They've edited both of those things out. And also, Rey Mysterio dressed as a Flash. Thought was fucking cool. Looked really cool.
Yeah.
And he does every WrestleMania as people, any kind of knowledge at all, you will know that WrestleMania is where Rey Mysterio always turns up as a different superhero. He's done numerous ones, but this was definitely one of his coolest ones. It's just a spot fest. I gave it 3 out of 5 because, I mean, Billy Kidman almost murders himself with a shooting star press.
Oh, Jesus.
Gee, I was terrified. Luckily, he got his arms down. At this point, he's married to Tori Wilson as well, so you're thinking being laid up in bed, probably not the worst thing in the world, as it stands. But ultimately, it's so throwaway, and I can't give it any more than 3.5. And just like that Jamie Noble Rey Mysterio title match that we saw in the Royal Rumble, yeah, Jamie Noble versus Rey Mysterio, just like that match, it just kind of it ends too quickly, and also it's too throwaway. This is very much a case of go on in, have a match. You flippy little shits. This is a WrestleMania where they tried to drag everybody onto the card, and that felt that way because of the tag matches and that. But at least this had some half decent wrestling. That's why I've given it 3.5.
Yeah, it was fine. It was, as you say, it was a spot fest, really. Right, well, someone else got the top rope. A lot of quick eliminations. Like, I think Funaki was eliminated in, like, fucking 4 seconds or some nonsense. Like, broke the record for shortest time in a battle royal or kind of situation. He's always the one to take the comedy shtick, which is a shame. It was okay. It was no better than okay. Ray was kind of the MVP of the match, but was still only wrestling for probably about 6 minutes maximum. And he went through 2 or 3 opponents in the end. Yeah, I enjoyed it. It was good fun. Bit of a spot fest, kind of. Again, just shows what Vince feels now about the cruiserweight division, as we see, exemplified in the way 205 Live is treated, and a lot of the smaller guys are treated when they're on SmackDown or Raw, is how he felt still at this era. He's just never been into small flippy guys, but okay, Rey Mysterio's over, so we'll provide a situation where he can get on WrestleMania and have a relatively good showing. As you say, it feels like people are just being shoehorned onto the card. Like, Nunzio, go out there and get a pop. First time he's got a pop in his entire career. Yeah, nothing really. It was fine, but no consequence to it whatsoever. It was just filler, really.
All killer, no filler. And 3.5. 3.5, 3. 3 out of 5, and I think that's fairly reasonable, actually.
Yeah, I think solid. Yeah.
What we're looking for, Steve, is a 5-star match. That's what we're looking for. And
Marquee
value. Oh, I couldn't wait for this because I remember how stupid as shit this was, and I just couldn't remember. I just couldn't wait for it, and I now remember just how bad it was. It's Inter-Promotional Warfare. Stone Cold Steve Austin is a special guest referee for the Titanic clash of Bill Goldberg versus Brock Lesnar. This is in the mid-card. There's problems aplenty. Wow. This fucking match is truly special. In a very, very, very awkward sentence. It's special because it's fucking atrocious. And wow, I tell you what, it makes that match from WrestleMania 33 look 5-star by comparison. This is horrible. This is 2 men who are leaving the company. The crowd are very aware of this, so they have just completely hijacked this match. This is one of the very first matches I ever remember watching where the crowd hijacked a match. And I thought, it's weird. But, this is where Smarks really came into their own. I'd never really seen anything too Smarky before, other than The Rock and Brock Lesnar when they were chanting "You sold out" at him. And it was very weird. They were just all over Lesnar and Goldberg for the get-go, just booing them. They were shit. And it's pretty obvious that these 2 guys decided, well, fuck you then. If you're not going to be, if you're not going to reciprocate any kind of appreciation for what we're doing here, we're just going to shit all over it and make it the shittest match ever. I think it takes about 4 minutes to get to the first lockup. It's terrible. This is actually awful, but it's great awful because the crowd make it fucking fun with their consistent hijacking. No, this is awful. Absolutely awful. Deafening you sold out chants. Even JR's like, well, it has been reported that Brock Lesnar might be going to the NFL. What do you mean has been reported? Like, here's one fun fact for you. Lesnar actually announced he was leaving WWE 12 days before this match. Well, fuck you then, sir. Like, there's no kayfabe here. Like, he literally said, I'm going. Like, I am leaving after this match, and well before WrestleMania. Imagine being told that well before the hype. And then he wonders why he got buried by Austin and Goldberg on the way out. Like, you know, just the lack of professionalism and a lack of giving a shit. And it's really sad because this should have been spectacular in some way or some fashion. You know, it should have been an absolute, at least two monster horses kicking the shit out of each other, which, to be fair, their WrestleMania 33 match was, and it was actually done quite well. This was hot garbage. Arguably contender for worst match of the night, if not the worst match of the night.
I preferred the evening gown match because at least I can watch that back with the sound off and have a crack one out. Like, this is just fucking awful. This is there's a lot of, it's a very slow pushing contest is what it is. Just two guys locking up, neither guy giving way, trying to see who's the strongest, and you know, it's equal, and it's awful. It's awful to watch. There's no psychology to it. All the way through this storyline, we're told these guys, you know, they hate each other. There's been this one-upmanship, attacking each other. You know, the build has been fine. You know, it's been okay. The package they can put together for this match has been decent. So at least go out there and have a little bit of tempo to it, a bit of aggression. But it's like just a bit of a shoving contest, and they're both scared of each other, and it's rubbish. Goldberg's blowing out his ass after 2 lockups. The fans are all over it. It really is the drizzling shits. It's ego-filled as well. Neither guy wants to work to make the other guy look any better than they have to at the absolute minimum. The finish comes pretty much out of nowhere. It's just fucking shit. And honestly, Austin Austin chants. He's the fucking referee. He's done nothing because there's been 2 lockups, and the fans start chanting for Austin. And Lesnar and Goldberg both look over him, and he's just shrugged like, well, yeah, you shit. I am so much fucking superior to either of you. Like, the stunners at the end, which is so inevitable that they're going to happen. It's inevitable Goldberg getting a stunner. It's inevitable that Lesnar's getting a stunner at the end of the match. It was just like when Austin like goes to open a beer and has a beer with Goldberg, the fans are booing the shit out of it. Fuck Goldberg. It's just, the whole thing is fucking terrible. It's one of the worst Mania matches ever. Like, I hated Roman Reigns and The Undertaker. I hated Roman and Brock from a couple of years ago. Atrocious. And they're, you know, candidates for the worst ever main event of WrestleMania. But this is so much worse. It's fucking, it's so poor. It's so poor. Neither, you know, obviously we know Brock can work, and we'd even seen that in the couple of pay-per-views that we've covered so far. He's actually capable of going out there and having good matches and has multiple wrestling moves at this point rather than the 2 that he uses today. And we know Goldberg's Goldberg, you know, he's an attraction. But again, I mean, I don't know how long this goes. It feels like it goes on for 3 days. But, you know, Goldberg was all about smash and grab. Go in there, 5-minute match, get out. And putting him in there and asking him to have a longer form WWE style match was never going to work. It was just fucking, it's awful, man. It honestly was annoying watching it. I was feeling just increasingly pissed off watching the match.
Yeah, 13 minutes 43.
Jesus Christ. And there's about 5 moves in it. The lockups are about 10 minutes 43 of that.
Yep. Yeah, you're banging to rights with it. There's one great moment where he gives military press sort of spear. Fucking awesome, which I love that move.
Yeah, that was cool show of power.
Oh, fucking, I'm stealing that. I'm having that for when I wrestle a cruiserweight. But other than that, it was dreadful. Utterly dreadful. I have written down here 1.5. I'm reducing it to 1. No, I'm not. I'm reducing it to half. Fuck both of them. And that's for Stone Cold. Congratulations, mate. Half star. Get out. Yeah, just terrible. 30 minutes 43 as well. No Goldberg match should be going out on. It's ridiculous. A couple of cheeky little facts as well to throw in on top of the one I've already thrown in. Vince McMahon, according to Brock Lesnar, gave Brock clearance to bury him in 30 seconds, but he chose not to. That is apparently Brock Lesnar he swears by that story. He says that apparently Vince McMahon said, because he wasn't happy about dropping the title to Eddie. I think he wanted to drop it at Mania, but Vince was like, look, as part of this, we're going to build you up as this monster, obviously, and we're going to have you destroy Goldberg at WrestleMania. He said, if you want to beat him up in 30 seconds and bury him, you can. So, I don't know how much of that is true. Maybe Lesnar was too scared to, maybe if the guy was smaller. I mean, Goldberg might be a bit of a lummox, but at this point, he probably could have handled himself quite well in a fist fight. So, do you really want to take liberties with someone like Goldberg? It's probably safer to do it with someone a bit smaller. And also, this is a very fun story, and it's been recounted many times, and it's actually quite true. One of the people chanting "You sold out" was Shane McMahon himself. At this point, Shane McMahon would always go and try and sit in the crowd. He'd be one of these sneaky wrestlers. You probably see it at indie shows. The wrestler might sneak out to the back and watch from the back or something like that. Shane McMahon was not above this. He used to like getting involved. He used to like to feel. It's probably why people related to him so much more than they did his father, because he always still felt himself as a fan. And apparently there's numerous camera angles and images of him just going mental, screaming "You sold out" and giving them both abuse as a fan because he thought it was great fun. So, yeah, can't really say more than that. Yeah, it was. The reason I gave it 1.5, and I've just seen on my notes here, was because of the crowd. I thought the crowd deserved 1. So that says it all. It's a big fuck you. And I have written down here, see you at WrestleMania 33, lads. Pointless pyro as well. What the fuck is going on there? Like, did you see this? Yeah, I don't know if doesn't know. Madison Square Garden is indoors, has a roof on it, and then they cut to a shot outside where they just let off a shit ton of fireworks off the roof. Like, pointless.
Adds to the atmosphere.
I've been to Madison Square Garden, right? And I've been to New York City, as have you. And it's pretty condensed, isn't it? It's really it's concrete jungle for a reason. And no one can see them. And the few people who can probably think there's another terrorist attack. Sorry, but that's just probably how it is. Letting off fireworks randomly in the middle of New York for no apparent reason when it's nowhere near, Times Square, it's nowhere near any kind of holiday. It's just completely right. What a waste of money and time. Utterly pointless. This is Vince McMahon. I won't be surprised if because Vince comes out straight after this, doesn't he? Thanks the fans. And probably because he's so furious with the last match, he feels like he needs to apologize in some way. And I wouldn't be surprised if Vince was like, fuck it, hit my pyros. And that's his pyros for the night. Like half the city just explodes. No chance. It's fucking loving it. Like, I've never seen so many pyros in all my life for no pointless reason. Well, that and the Saudi Arabia shows. At this point, I'm starting to get really, really fed up, if I'm being honest, mate. I'm sitting here thinking, this is our first WrestleMania. This should be awesome. This should be special. I'll tell you what, at this point, I was really, really regretting picking 2004 because I was thinking, wow, 2003 had WrestleMania 19. Look at all the matches there, and then WrestleMania 21 as well. Jesus, so much. And I'm thinking we're covering this shit. But you know what will save me? Not the tag titles. Not fucking tag titles. Sudden death again. Fatal 4-way match for the other tag team titles, the World Tag Team titles. The world's greatest tag team. Benjamin and Haas versus the APA versus the fucking Basham Brothers versus your reigning tag team champions, Rikishi and Scotty 2 Hotty. Yes, they've still got the belts. State of your fucking tag divisions. Fucking atrocious. Like, I get it. The Hardys are not really a thing anymore. And, well, I mean, I think at this point Jeff had gone to TNA. And I understand that, APA are getting on, Ron Simmons especially. Benjamin and Haas are kind of fledgling. They've lost their credibility after losing Kurt Angle. But come on, the Bashams, man. We said this before. They're the kind of guys you see on the headline act for an independent show at the warm-up to Butlins or something. Like, it's terrible. Terrible. It's dull. It's pointless. This is the worst of the two matches, I thought. That says a lot because they're both terrible. 1.5 I've given this. 1.5. And a lot of that is just out of respect for some great wrestlers like Shelton Benjamin. But I hate this match. And at this point, I just thought, I don't care. Like, this was the match where I started thinking, this is the point where I started doing the Raw thing. Oh, I'm just going to skip forward a bit. Fuck off. Pointless. What is this doing on a WrestleMania card? Much less WrestleMania 20. Terrible. 1.5. Get out.
Yeah, and there was just no real popularity involved. There was no one in there who was particularly over. It was completely cold. You didn't have any storylines coming in between these 4 tag teams. And, the Rikishi and Scotty retain. The Rikishi hits a banzai drop on one of the fucking Bashams. No one cares which one. They do the Too Cool dance and stuff. But I was just thinking, like, Royal Rumble 2000 was in Madison Square Garden, and they did it in the Royal Rumble, and it was super over. The fans were losing their shit for it, like 4 and a bit years earlier. And just no one really cared. It was still the most popular part of the match, but no one really cared. Like, these talents were not over. They were 4 and a bit years past where anyone gave a shit about Too Cool as a tag team, and particularly because they didn't have Grandmaster Sexay. Too Cool was Scotty 2 and Grandmaster Sexay, and Rikishi was kind of doing his own thing or there for 6-man stuff. Just really fucking dire.
Let's talk about Donald Trump. And not because Donald Trump is currently rampaging around doing his thing.
You had a group on one side and you had a group on the other, and they came at each other with clubs, and it was vicious and it was horrible.
This is amazing. So Edge is coming. We find that out in a vignette. Good for you, Edge. I'd be coming too if I'd seen Chris Jericho and Trish Stratus doing what they were doing. So Jesse the Body Ventura walks out. Now, at this point, he's kind of pushing to be a politician. And as you probably saw in the Hall of Fame package.
In 2008, maybe we ought to put a wrestler in the White House.
So he comes down, and lo and behold, Donald Trump, who is there having a good time with his son. I'm having a great time. It's a great time here at WrestleMania. Thank you. He's at ringside. Haunting. I don't know whether it's any good. I apologise. It doesn't have to be good, does it? We all know. Decent. Oh, thank you. So Donald Trump's at ringside, and he asks him in one of the most hilarious moments and so foreshadowing with Linda McMahon and everything else. He goes, "Can I count on your support and financial backing for the presidential race of 2008?" And maybe, just maybe, I'm thinking that Donald Trump was so furious that it was Jesse Ventura himself couldn't knock off Barack Obama, and that's why he the role now. But it's so cringe, and Donald Trump's what we forget as well is the Trump Plaza hosted WrestleMania 4 and 5.
Yeah.
And yeah, here we are. This shit fest. Just think, what the fuck? Donald Trump at WrestleMania, man. It's he is the perfect guy, isn't he? Every time I think, the more and more I see Donald Trump on the WWE program or old WWF programming, I think, wow, you actually fit in quite nicely in this company. And it wouldn't be the last time we'd see him at WrestleMania either. He's actually got quite a legacy when I think about it.
That's why he's a Hall of Famer.
I would argue he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame more than probably Pete Rose for starters. He actually does.
Mate, if he'd have been tombstoned by Kane 3 fucking times, then I'd agree. Yeah, but poor Pete Rose did have to get pile driven into insanity.
Let's not forget as well the infamous Halloween advert from, I think it was 2001, where Pete Rose is like telling everybody to get lost, and he's like, "I hate candy," and then the last person to knock on the door is Katie. He goes, "Hi, Pete." He's like, "Ah!" It's fucking really good fun. If I can splice it in, I will.
Trick or treat! It's just smell what the Rock is cooking.
Beat it, jabroni!
Candy for Olympic hero?
Nothing for you. It's true. It's true.
Trick or treat, brother!
Take a hike.
Halloween is Jericho! Dead man walk. Yeah, you dig it? sucker!
You're the sucker.
WWE No Mercy. Live Sunday, October 20th on pay-per-view.
Looks like the trick's on you, Pete.
I don't know why, but this is one of the highlights of the night for me. Just seeing Donald Trump just looking totally clueless, but having a good time nonetheless. He's like, do you know what I like? I like tons of cash. Thank you. He's just sitting there.
Literally looking. He's looking around for his helpers.
Yes.
Where are my helpers? I don't know where I am. I'm very scared right now. I don't like loud noises.
That's so brilliant. I love it. This is just an excuse for us to do Donald Trump impressions and nothing else, really. But how do you follow Donald Trump? This has been a car crash, and you think, well, I mean, obviously they wouldn't have got it now, but considering the foreshadowing, I very much would like to grab something by the pussy. Thank you. Well, now you're going to have your opportunity, sir, because it's time for the WWE Women's Championship. Molly Holly versus Victoria. Victoria is the reigning champion coming into this match. Molly Holly looking to dethrone her, and she better, because if she doesn't, she's going to have her head shaved bald. So obviously we know who is losing this one, because Victoria has nothing to fucking lose here other than the belt. You know, they should have said, like, whoever loses also, you know, loses their hair. They would have been better than just Molly Holly. Here's a fun fact for you as well. Actually, WWE weren't going to have a women's championship match on this card. It was just going to be the evening gown match. And Molly Holly was so disappointed with that she actually went to Vince McMahon and said, look, you know, I think a women's match deserves to be on this card. If you put it on there, I'll have my head shaved bald. That is exactly why her head was shaved bald, because she offered to do that. And you want to talk about women's evolution and all these people banging on about the usual people. How about a bit of love for Molly Holly, who was willing to give up her fucking hair just to ensure that the women's title was on a card? Like, that's a level of dedication that I don't think many wrestlers would have the balls or guts to fucking suggest in the first place. I really love this woman so much. And they had a competent match as well. It wasn't a world-class match, but it was a competent match. I gave it 3 out of 5, and fucking it says a lot, really, that in this day and age, in that era, in 2004, that Molly Holly and Victoria could bring some form of credibility back to a terrible card. Tells you everything you need to know. That even then, they had the women in place to make the change. And it's taken all this time, 10 to 12 years later for them to really enact proper change since that notion. But it's people like Molly Holly and Victoria going out there and working their bollocks off and trying their hardest. And someone like Molly Holly willing to give up her hair just so that they could have a place on the Wrestlemania card. Because the fact that you could have that atrocity, that bullshit, bimbo-tastic, cretinous crap that I saw earlier with that fucking awful evening gown match, like, you know, the fact that that supposedly is good enough to be the only representation of women on that card is sickening, even now, and even then it seems fucking offensive, but now especially. So I'm so grateful for this match, and yeah, I think they're fully deserving of at least 3 out of 5. I would have given them 5-star just out of generosity for putting up with the amount of horse shit this company throws at women. It was very evident at this point that women were not really to be respected or cared about, and I really admire the fact that Molly Holly was willing to have her head shaven. Ultimately, she does, and to be fair, kind of rocked it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I thought it was a solid match. To be fair, I think Molly Holly was always a good worker. I think Victoria was underrated as a worker. I thought it was a good match. The biggest problem that I had, other than obviously the stipulation, was 2 things. Number 1, the commentary. Lawler is a fucking dick all the way through this, and JR's not much better, to be perfectly honest. It's awful all the way through. And, you know, as soon as you get the word shaved and a woman in the same sort of sentence, and that sends Jerry Lawler fucking mental anyway, it was just really, really uncomfortable to listen to. And then the actual shaving of the head took fucking forever. It was like a 10-minute segment of her getting her head shaved on the stage. And it was like, okay, we'll just put the razor through first, just like a clean sweep through and leave it at that. But no, we're going to shave the whole fucking head live. Why? We don't need to see the whole thing. It's just absolute waste of time and energy, and it's just unnecessarily humiliating. And the fact that she had to offer some kind of stupid stipulation like that, where she would have to be kind of embarrassed and humiliated and completely overhaul her look just to get Vince's attention, because women putting on a good wrestling match for one of his company's championships wasn't enough. Tells you everything you need to know about Vince McMahon.
Yeah, it does. It really does. The only upside to this is knowing that Molly Holly got to, and Victoria by proxy, had a WrestleMania moment. And in a time when women didn't really have a moment unless it involved getting your beaver out, if I'm being honest.
Get your rat out.
That's it, laddie! Marvellous. I would have absolutely taken the Highlanders in that tag team division at this point. Jesus Christ. It wouldn't even the fucking Canada! Jesus! I hate you, Vince McMahon. Yeah, so, by the way, Michael Cole takes about 16 different shots at Molly Holly. Molly Holly without any hair with the ridiculous Molly Holly's hairstyle. I'm sorry, Frosted Tips. You want to contribute to this conversation? Shut your whore mouth, sunshine. You look like you were shat out by Mark Wahlberg during one of his backstage eras when he was in New Kids on the Block. You fucking Timmy. Shut the fuck up. Noise the fucking bejesus out of me. And then I have to listen to him commentate on this. Eddie Guerrero defends his WWE Championship against Kurt Angle. This is the portion of the show where I get an erection. Because, my lord, you want to talk about the evening gown match being pornographic to some young men? I mean, this sums up me as a wrestling fan. This is my pornography. Eddie Guerrero versus Kurt Angle. Oh, I don't really need to say anything else. You hear that, you know what you're going to get. And I remember this match being a ballbuster, a blockbuster, just everything you can ask for. And it was. It was magical. And again, I just end the match as gibbering mess, just remembering how great Eddie Guerrero was and realizing that this company, even now, would thrive so much more with someone like Eddie Guerrero at the helm. And this is magical. Great build up as well. Menacing Kurt Angle. There's this little bit of evil creeping into Kurt Angle. We're getting close to bestiality, sex, Kurt Angle. And and for anybody who wonders what the fuck I'm on about, please search Charmel and Kurt Angle on YouTube and everything will become very apparent to you very quickly. Kurt Angle, very menacing. Love that little build-up as well, where Eddie said, I can beat Paul Heyman with both hands tied behind my back, and then that leads to Kurt Angle coming out and taking advantage of him, beating him, to a pulp. For a very cool image, very cool. I remember at the time watching it, thinking, "Fuck you, Kurt Angle." I was so angry about that, and thinking, "Brilliant job's a good one." That's exactly what he should have done in that scenario where he turned heel. This build-up was so simple and so effective. Eddie Guerrero's a drug user. He's an abuser. He belongs in rehab. He's not fit to represent you people like I am, the wholesome, milk-drinking Olympic gold medalist, but with an angry, vicious edge to him. And they go out there and provide a technical masterpiece. This is a technical masterpiece. This is beautiful to watch. The storytelling, the psychology, but also the simplicity of it. There isn't any huge explosive moves in here. There's some great suplexes and some great sort of submissions and but everything was meaningful. And that's what I love about this. This is really a good example. I'll tell you what, if you're an aspiring wrestler in any format, this is the kind of match you want to watch because it's all about those lockups, the meaning and the fluidity and the aggression of everything involved. Eddie Guerrero, the way he locks up, the ferociousness of Kurt Angle's ankle lock, everything is so crisp. There's no mistakes. And we also ultimately get this beautiful moment of storytelling with, Kurt Angle applying the ankle lock once again. Eddie Guerrero knowing this, he'd loosened his bootlaces rather smartly. And of course, the boot comes away and Eddie Guerrero takes the opportunity to roll him up and also put his feet on the ropes as well for leverage and gets that sneaky little pin. There's something so beautiful about this match, and it was almost like someone just dropped a spotlight, a ray of sunshine onto you, and you just all of a sudden felt like you'd been separated from WrestleMania 20 and you were taken somewhere else for half an hour. This was very special, and it was, for me, easily, and I do mean easily, the match of the night. Nothing else comes close to this for me. I gave it 4.5 out of 5. Very close to 5 stars. I thought it was absolutely beautiful. The only reason I haven't given it 5 is it doesn't have the gravity, the situation doesn't feel like it has the gravity of, like, you know, Eddie beating Brock Lesnar, or a Hell in a Cell match with Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, for example. It just sits right underneath that. That's not to say this isn't world class. I thought this was the standout moment of the night. It was worth waiting for. And ultimately, when you look back at the rest of the pay-per-view and stuff, it's a lot of shit you got to wade through, but it was worth it just to watch this.
Yeah, fantastic match. Not too much more that needs to be said, really. It's an absolute beauty, and the finish is so typical Eddie, like selling the ankle after being in the ankle lock for ages, and a couple of times, so he's loosening his boot to try and alleviate the swelling. Kurt goes for the ankle lock again, and Eddie just pulls his foot out of the boot, so Kurt's left standing there just holding a shoe, and then gets taken. It's beautiful. It's brilliant stuff. Everyone comes out of it looking good. There's that kind of quintessential Eddie humor in the way the match comes up. It's brilliant. It's really good. It's really well done. There is literally nothing in this match to dislike or to get angry about or to split opinion. The whole thing is just wonderful. Great match, great story told, brilliant finish, and yeah, just a credit to two of the best that have ever done it, without a doubt.
It's very top heavy, this card, actually, when you look back at it. And this is really... I understand why it's not the main event. I personally would have had it as the main event, especially, but that's easy to say in hindsight because I know how it turned out. But ultimately, it's just awesome. Fun little fact for you as well. Kurt Angle wrestled this entire match with numb fingers. He had complications with his neck again. That had come from, obviously, 2003, the year before, when he wrestled Brock Lesnar. That was kind of like, that was it. His neck had enough, and he needed surgery for traumatic spinal injury. And they basically were like, yeah, get surgery or be paralyzed for the rest of your life. He actually risked paralysis wrestling for the WWE title several times. And he got a quick botch kind of surgery, quick fix surgery. So this surgery basically less invasive, but could get the job done at a pinch. And the idea was, sums up wrestling mentality. Oh, I've got to get back as soon as possible. Oh, I can't have my actual broken neck heal properly. Fuck that. Give me the quick fix surgery. It's almost like super gluing your neck for a bit. It'll be all right for a while, but we're going to have to revisit this. And this is exactly what happened. And this would end up being ultimately his last proper wrestling match of the year until around SummerSlam, just because of the sheer level of trauma that his neck sustained. And yeah, to wrestle a match like this with numb fingers tells you everything you need to know about Kurt Angle as a wrestler as well. Wow. Most of us can't even pick up a fucking cup of tea with numb fingers. And here's Kurt Angle going out there having a 30-minute classic with Eddie Guerrero. Bravo, gentlemen. Bravo. It was beautiful. The following match is the match that I imagined... I don't know why, but I imagined you would gush over this in particular. I don't know why, but I looked at this match and thought, this is definitely a Steve match, because it has that really nice balance of sports entertainment, but also I know that you're a huge mark for The Undertaker like I am. We have obviously discussed the building of the return of The Undertaker on the last two shows. Of course, there was the interruption at the Rumble. There was also a random promo in the middle of nowhere. We didn't really get a chance to cover all the nonsense, absolute nonsense that was going off on Raw. The ring shaking and levitating was one of my particular highlights. When the ring just starts floating and Kane's like, this footage is really funny. Just classic Undertaker fare. But it worked because we hadn't seen it since 1999. It's amazing to think. 5 years since we saw the Dead Man. Of course, that time had been filled with the American Badass, and once again, an injury needed to be rolled around. He needed to kind of, just heal up his shoulder, basically, as a lot of people will know as Undertaker fans. Recurring shoulder injuries and knee injuries are obviously a problem for Undertaker, and obviously as you're getting older, being a larger man as well, 6'10", 300+ pounds, that kind of stuff's going to take its toll. And so, of course, he was buried alive. Thanks to Kane, the cretin, and also by proxy by Vince McMahon, who's in the match with at Survivor Series 2003. Actually, a really good match. I would argue Vince McMahon's greatest ever match in terms of actual content. And here we are, the return of the Dead Man. And of course, with the Dead Man comes, oh yes! I love me some fucking. I'm all about the impressions tonight, and I love me some Paul Bearer, man. He was huge.
Yes, he was.
boy, he's a fucking big boy. And the reason I mention that is because I have a fantastic fun fact on this one. So, WWE actually wanted Paul Bearer back, and Undertaker said, "I'd like Paul Bearer back for this match. It'd be really cool, it'd be really important." And Paul Bearer said, "I'm too fat." Basically, he had a real problem with his weight, and believe it or not, he'd actually dropped about 40 or 50 pounds coming into this match. So, at his height, William Moody, which is his real name, Paul Bearer, he was 545 pounds.
My God.
Which is astonishing. That is Yokozuna, right? That's his weight. Paul Bearer is a short, podgy man. Like, that is scary. Like, so he'd actually lost, I think, around, actually no, more around 100 to 150 pounds by this point. One of the reasons for that is because WWE, in re-signing him with his bonus, gave him gastric band surgery, gave him the money to afford the gastric bypass, so that would help him lose weight over time. So that's the reason why he was seen in the state he was, because I thought, God, blimey, he doesn't look very good. And ultimately, he'd look a lot better. And actually, if you see him later down the line in 2004, by the end of it, he's actually down to like quite a decent weight. I think he's down to about 250, 260, something like that, when he eventually gets buried alive by The Undertaker. A lot of burying going on around here. He gets buried alive in concrete, I believe it is, or cement. In arguably the world's worst main event, the Dudleys versus The Undertaker in a handicap match. Great American Bash, ladies and gentlemen. Don't watch it. But there's just this bit where he's like, Undertaker, no! It's creepy, but it's quite fun. But yeah, up to 545 pounds. Do you know who he told that he was up to 545 pounds? Jim Cornette in a shoot interview. I'm surprised Jim Cornette didn't cripple his self-esteem enough that he never came back, as the cretin that he is. But ultimately, Paul Bearer's there, the Druids are back, and out comes the most simplistic but very appealing image of The Undertaker as the original Wild West Undertaker. And the whole thing is just brilliant. Your floor, mate. What did you think of this? The presentation, everything, the match as well, involving himself and Kane selling as well.
Yeah, it was... The spectacle is what it was all about. Like, The Undertaker versus Kane is a rivalry from the Attitude Era that really got me into wrestling. It really captured my imagination as a kid. So it was awesome kind of having this build again. And the vignette for this is fantastic because you've just got all of the, carny, supernatural shenanigans. You mentioned the ring levitating, Kane trying to get his pyros to go off and he can't get him to go off. Because, The Undertaker is supposedly blocking it from afar. As you say, we haven't seen The Undertaker in about 4 or 5 months at this point in any of his guises. And obviously it's been about 5 years since you've seen him as the Dead Man. And this is a kind of a real new look for even as the Dead Man Undertaker. Much more simplistic and stripped back, and pretty much the look that he stuck with for quite a long period of time. And the weird thing is, this is... Well, coming in 1990s, this is 14 years into his WWE career. Obviously, he'd been in WCW before that and in the territories before that. And he probably goes on to have the best 3 or 4 years of his career over the next few years with his rivalries with the likes of Edge and Batista. And his world title runs as well that he has on SmackDown. It's technically billed as an inter-promotional match because The Undertaker is a SmackDown superstar. Kane is from Raw. It was all about the vignette and the Undertaker entrance. The Undertaker entrance was awesome. Kane selling the Undertaker. He's not back. He's not back. He's dead. I killed him. He's not back. And yeah, you get the Druids. You get Bearer with the urn. You get the Undertaker coming down. You get, Paul Bearer pointing to the steps and the Undertaker kind of going off. Things that we hadn't really seen, even during the Ministry era, the power dynamic between Paul Bearer and The Undertaker was very different at that point. And obviously you'd had before that, Paul Bearer had joined up with Kane and he'd joined up with Mick Foley and all sorts of shenanigans. This was kind of the original dynamic between the two. And it was awesome. Just hearing that gong and the crowd lose their shit. It's probably the biggest reaction of the night, I would suggest, for a entrance for a superstar coming in. yeah, that was great. The match itself is fine. You know, they've obviously had other matches at WrestleMania, which I would say are probably better than this. You know, their match, I think 14, where they had that first match together.
Yeah.
That was
Kane
a
was the
really
unstoppable.
good match. Right, exactly.
Tombstone's
Kane's coming in as the
improved.
monster. Yeah. Kane's the absolute monster. Undertaker's the underdog. The dynamic is completely shifted in this. The Undertaker is the returning, vengeful spirit, and Kane is kind of the man to be on the receiving end of the onslaught. And, you know, Kane hits the choke slam on Undertaker, and Undertaker does the sit up and no sells it, which was great. Tombstone's in once for the finish. It was really, really good stuff. And he doesn't try and blur the lines between being the American badass and the, you know, I am the dead man again. And it was, yeah, really, really enjoyable as a spectacle and as a presentation. The match is okay. You know, it is what it is. You know, two big guys kicking each other in the face. It was fine. It's probably a 2.5 star match, but it's just elevated to, you know, probably a 3.5, 4 star sports entertainment presentation because of the vignette and the Undertaker entrance. It's just cool. And you know that there are kids who would have been growing up at that point who weren't around during the Dead Man Undertaker, have kind of grown up with Biker Taker, seeing Dead Man Taker for the first time, who would have been losing their shit in the same way as the kids were in the early 90s, the original Phenom. So, yeah, loved it. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I have written down here actually 3.5. So
Yeah.
fair enough. I probably would have given it more, but I felt that the match was a little lackluster and a bit tedious at times. But I don't expect it to be. One thing actually, my favourite match of theirs of all time was actually their match in 2005 for the World Heavyweight title, where Kane beat him for the World Heavyweight title. I think it was a Clash of Champions. It was actually fucking great. A great match, and that was probably my highlight from their rivalry. But you mentioned WrestleMania 14, such an iconic moment with the Batman style cloak as well that he had as the Dead Man. Very cool. He was sort of very slowly moving towards the Ministry of Darkness as well, which was awesome. So yeah, this is it was so good, but yeah, it was also quite sad for me because I sat there and watched it and thought, that's it. He never goes back. This is Dead Man now for the rest of his career. And 15 years later, he's still appearing as the Dead Man. And I thought, I just felt like there was so much more to the Biker Taker, and especially in this more modern era where talking and self-promotion is so important to who you are as a wrestler. Character is so much more important now than it ever was, even back then, to so many people, just because we are so saturated with indie wrestlers. So actually, to stand out, you need better promotion skills, mic skills than ever before. That's why we wax lyrical about people like Adam Cole and The Miz, because they kind of really bridge the gap so beautifully. But yeah, overall.
Did you see Taker's leathery boner? Did you see it like at one point? I think it's when he's taking the choke slam and he's laying flat and his like leather trousers unfortunately pop up, so it looks like he's pitching tent. Bless him.
Yeah, it's actually not that uncommon a thing. Wrestlers seem to get a boner quite a bit just from the general rush of blood or adrenaline. There's obviously a rather famous moment where I think Al Snow gets his keggs pulled down and he's got an erection and all this kind of stuff. Like, yeah,
John Cena has had a fair few boners in those jorts.
I can imagine, actually. Yeah, all that dry humping during a match, John Cena. And I'm sure, well, if Buddy Ray had a penis, then he probably would have as well. But it was devoured by his amorphous pubic fat. Anyway, sorry. Burying Buddy Ray for the sake of burying Buddy Ray. That leaves one more match. Hey, everybody, look over there. It's Triple H and Shawn Michaels. It's a meme from this match where everybody just draws all over the third combatant's face and pretends he's not there because he is redacted. For the World Heavyweight Championship, a triple threat match, Triple H, surprise, defends his World Heavyweight Championship against Shawn Michaels, and of course the winner of the 2004 Royal Rumble, redacted, Chris Benoit. So this is a match where you're watching it for the moment, aren't you? You're waiting for that one moment where you know what happens in the end, and everybody knows that iconic moment. But I was curious about the match. Been a long time, and I remember watching this with one of my mates, like I said earlier, and because you're obviously in a room with lads and you're having a laugh and you're eating chips and dip or whatever fucking, fucking Watsits in our livelihood love on skips. The reality is that you don't really kind of take in the nuances of professional wrestling at 19 when you're having a laugh and drinking Red Bull with your mates. So, I was very curious to see how the match would pan out, because I'm a much more discerning and technically, honestly, a more knowledgeable person. It just comes with getting older. And ultimately, I found this a bit boring. I really did. I was expecting this to be thrilling and exciting and an emotional roller coaster. And actually, it's kind of about 15 or so minutes, 15, 20 minutes of predictable spots that I've seen before that ultimately lead to the one moment of the relentless crossface. And yeah, I thought I'd have so much to say about this match, but I don't. The ending is magical. I'm sure you'll talk about that as well, but I didn't really like the match that much. I actually ultimately felt that it suffered a little bit from, I can't believe I'm going to say this, I felt it suffered from having a third man. I don't think it had to have Shawn Michaels in it. And I think when you look at some of the great talents that were available that weren't really doing a great deal or were stuffed into tag matches and stuff like that, like, you could have had Shelton Benjamin versus Shawn Michaels on this card as an undercard match. We could have had Christian versus Shawn Michaels, or Chris Jericho versus Shawn Michaels again, like you did the last WrestleMania, or so many different things. But ultimately, Trips had to look after his boy, and Shawn Michaels had lost the feud-ending match, the last man standing match at Royal Rumble. And then the build-up to this was that he, super kicked Chris Benoit and basically stole his title shot. It was like, yeah, fuck you, I want it. I was like, okay, it's not quite how the Rumble works, buddy, but never mind. And yeah, ultimately, well, it's quite funny actually when you look at it. Shawn Michaels, as a character, has a habit of being a whingy dickhead just to get his opportunities. Remember with the Undertaker, he was like, well, if you're not going to give me another match of Mania, I guess I'll have to cost you the match and be an arsehole. And that's kind of his gimmick, was that he was this renegade of sorts. And I don't think this match really lives up in any way. It's all about the moment at the end. And of course, with what's happened, nobody wants to remember this match anyway. So they're probably lucky in that respect that Eddie Guerrero and Kurt Angle completely stole the show from a wrestling and psychology standpoint. Because if they hadn't, it would have been much harder to gloss over what happened in this match. I mean, if you go on the network, it even says, doesn't it? Like, WrestleMania 20, the grandest stage of them all, where Kurt Angle and Eddie Guerrero do battle for the title. It's like, what about the main event, guys? That didn't happen. Shut your mouth.
Also, Triple H meets Shawn Michaels in the main event. Just the two of them? Shut your mouth.
Just the two of them, yeah. It was, very weird. What do you think of this match? I didn't like it. I thought it was pretty boring.
Yeah, it was one of those where it was fine. It was okay. There was nothing stand out about it. It was, just kind of a match that was waiting for the finish and for a moment to say, oh, look, we've given Benoit the belt, which at the time it was a great moment. It was that underdog story. It was, we're giving someone new a chance rather than the, establishment of Triple H. And, as much as Shawn Michaels was playing that renegade, he still represented really the wrestling establishment in terms of, this is a guy who's been at or near the top for a very, very, very long time, bar him being out with injury for a few years. It was all about that kind of moment where it felt like things were changing. We've got Randy Orton on the up. He's the mid-card champ. We've got John Cena's just won the US title as well off kind of, the Big Show's been around for so long. We've got Benoit and Eddie Guerrero beating the likes of Kurt Angle and Triple H and Shawn Michaels for both world belts. So it felt like we were going into this new era of new stars, and younger, fresher talent. And the older guys were kind of just being slightly put to the side and younger guys were being given preference. And, it kind of, No Way Out was a huge signifier for it. The Royal Rumble, obviously, which Benoit won, was a huge signifier for it as well. Not that Benoit and Guerrero were young at this point as such. They were probably the same sort of age, if not older, than Triple H. Probably a similar age to Shawn Michaels. They've been wrestling for an extremely long time. It's just they hadn't been at the top when they were in WCW. They had that glass ceiling as they were cruiserweights. And obviously had been kind of in and around the mid-card for the majority of their time in WWE, which was kind of 4 years at this, over 4 years at this point. And now we were suddenly seeing them for the first time as main event talent and kind of breaking through. So yeah, it was something new and fresh, which was great. But again, it is always awkward when you're watching it back because of the Benoit situation. You do feel kind of like, okay, I get why this was a great moment at the time, and I get the celebration and the cool reaction, Eddie coming out and celebrating, that was fantastic. It was lovely. But you do sort of think, it's a shame, innit? What a shame. It just kind of brings home that tragedy again. So, I thought the match itself, I thought it was okay. It didn't feel like the main event of WrestleMania, as you say. The Eddie Kurt match felt more main event. If it had been Triple H versus Shawn Michaels again as a singles match, that would have probably felt more main event because they had this real rivalry going in. Or if it had been a straight up title match, Triple H defends against Royal Rumble winner Benoit, it would have felt more main event. The dynamic didn't quite work. There was just no need for it, as you say, to be a triple threat. It needed to kind of be a singles match one way or the other. But even The Undertaker versus Kane felt more main event because the return of The Undertaker and the spectacle of it and all that. And I think the Evolution Rock and Sock Connection felt more main event as this, littered with legends sports entertainment presentation. So it's an odd one, really. Yeah, it was an odd choice for main event. It's cool. It's, in the fact it was given Fresh Blood a chance and there was this kind of big title change and it was a shocking finish, really. But yeah, the match didn't really live up to that billing and that position on the card. And there's been a lot of talk, and a lot of rumors coming out of the, Triple H didn't really rate Benoit. He just felt that Benoit wasn't championship material because he was too small or whatever, typical bullshit. So yeah, maybe there was something in that Triple H and Shawn being, the clique and everything just didn't really, enjoy Benoit, didn't really want Benoit to be in that position and to put him over too much. It just, I don't know. It did feel a bit kind of, this was in the middle of the card, solid match, but for the main event, underwhelming. On an underwhelming WrestleMania card, really, in terms of the match quality. There's only a couple of standout matches.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up, to be honest. I don't really have much else to add. It's an emotional moment seeing Eddie and Benoit at the top of the mountain together. And, they related to us so much more because they were the hard grafters that were always left behind. When you ever watch WCW, there was very much a mentality. It's quite ironic, actually, because 2003 was the tour of WCW death, where Triple H buried everybody possible WCW-wise. And then ultimately, the following year, at WrestleMania, we see the crowning achievement of WCW, really. These were their two best wrestlers. And here they are. At the top.
Even got Chavo with the Cruiserweight title.
Yeah, exactly. There was, these were two guys that, Benoit won the World Heavyweight title for all of about 11 days, I think, in WCW. He beat Jeff Jarrett in a ladder match. So at that point, it felt quite redundant anyway. Exactly. Man, indeed. I would have rather Jeff Jarrett was in his match, actually. That would have popped me so much. But it was just very strange. It was very emotional to see these two great men, the Radicals, finally on top, see out WrestleMania. They came in as Radicals, obviously, with Perry Saturn and Dean Malenko, who are kind of gone at this point. Perry Saturn had sort of drifted apart, really, and Dean Malenko had sort of transitioned backstage where he was a bit older than these guys. And yeah, these were the two kind of stalwarts of WCW. These were the last two guys left. These were the guys who were looking at each other going, and it must have been beautiful. And I can't imagine the emotion that must have been flowing at that point when you're sitting there thinking, as either Eddie or Benoit thinking, wow, we actually did it. We got to the mountaintop when we shouldn't have even got close. We shouldn't have even started climbing, really. And yet here we are as WWE and World Heavyweight Champion in the biggest company ever, at the biggest stage ever, at the biggest WrestleMania ever. That's pretty incredible. And it's made so fucking tragic knowing that Eddie passed away from a heart attack because of all of the things that had come before that. And Chris Benoit went, to a place that no one else really could understand and did such evil. And so one of the most beautiful and iconic images to ever be created in any kind of art form is now gone and is now forgotten, because simply put, people cannot ever truly realize and recommend and appreciate that moment ever again without thinking of the atrocities that were caused and the heartbreak that was also caused that came with those two men. It's absolutely heartbreaking, really, when you think about it. It's like taking one of the most beautiful pieces of art of all time and then just running a knife right through it, because you can't ultimately have nice things in the wrestling business. And, that's the sad legacy of this pay-per-view. And like you say, pretty much as we wrap it up, this was a very underwhelming WrestleMania, considering it was supposed to be the biggest of all time. And if you look at the two WrestleManias that's side to side, the ones that sandwich this one, there is light and day like no other. WrestleMania 19 had Austin versus The Rock 3. It had Lesnar versus Angle. It had even like the undercard. It was just astonishing. It had Jericho versus Shawn Michaels, Booker T versus Triple H. Even the tag team matches, Matt Hardy versus Rey Mysterio for the Cruiserweight title. And then at WrestleMania 21, Shawn Michaels versus Kurt Angle. Fucking Undertaker versus Randy Orton. Batista versus Triple H. Like, it really, Eddie Guerrero versus Rey Mysterio in a ladder match. Like, what the hell happened at this WrestleMania? This was a huge issue where it was a case of, right, well, we need to get everyone on the card. Everybody's got to appear because it's the biggest show ever, and everybody needs to get some of that sweet payday merch and everything else that goes with it. And it suffered because of that. Instead of thinking strongly and producing a great card like they had done for quite a few years building into this and going after as well, they opted for, just saturation, like they do now, which is why Manias just aren't nearly as good as they used to be. And this was probably the first real alarming signal of what was to come many, many years later. Thoroughly disappointing, considering this is our first ever Mania that we've covered for Manic Mondays. We've been doing this format for the better part of 3 years now. We've covered some amazing stuff. This is our first Mania, and ultimately, it's quite a deflating experience to watch it in full. But it is rescued by some magical moments, and ultimately one of the great all-time technical matches you'll ever see at WrestleMania. I think that something like Eddie Guerrero and Kurt Angle stands up there with Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels in terms of what it means to a technical wrestling fan. And it may not have the feel of an Undertaker versus Edge or Batista or something of that, or a John Cena versus Rock marquee value, but what it does have is something that those will never have, and that is technical efficiency and professionalism that could never, ever, ever be replicated again. So there is pluses to what is ultimately a very lackluster show.
Yeah, it was, as you say, there was a couple of really good matches. I really enjoyed the handicap match. I enjoyed the presentation with the Undertaker entrance and the build up to Undertaker and Kane, although the match was pretty meh. And Eddie Guerrero and Angle was magical. And I actually thought the Molly Holly Victoria was a solid match, particularly for how women's wrestling was portrayed at the time. It was actually a good, for its time, that's a fucking 15-star match. They weren't given opportunities to have matches like that, even on Raw, let alone on WrestleMania. So there was some good moments, but you're just reminded the women's stuff. Lesnar Goldberg, the main event was very underwhelming, and it just kind of gives you that moment at the end, which obviously makes us kind of uncomfortable with its context now with hindsight. Even the cruiserweight stuff, although it's fine, you just realize that the tag team division as well. Vince doesn't care about women and women's wrestling. Vince doesn't care about cruiserweights and cruiserweight wrestling. Vince doesn't care about tag team wrestling. And these are kind of three of our favorite kind of genres and types of wrestling that we enjoy watching on this podcast. So, that's one of the things that makes it difficult to watch a large amount of the current WWE product. And it's seeing those problems, even when you go back 15 years, being so evident and apparent, is just really demoralizing. It really is demoralizing. And people really talk up this, the quote unquote ruthless aggression era immediately before it became PG as one of the great eras. People talk about it being better than the Attitude Era, just not as influential and lacking some of the star power, in terms of Rock and Austin. But it had the, some incredible moments. It had better wrestling, but with the same level of promos and character. It just didn't. And, this WrestleMania is, kind of a year or two in to the ruthless aggression era, and it's fucking bang average as a WrestleMania. It's felt in large parts, it felt like an episode of Raw, and in other parts it felt like just any old pay-per-view. There's only a few matches and presentations that feel WrestleMania worthy, which is disappointing. And I know everyone gets on WrestleMania these days because it's a 7-hour show, as you were saying, but it was kind of shoehorned in here as well. Fuck it. Make sure Nunzio's on WrestleMania. Get Jindrak and Cade on there. It's money. It's just fucking boring. So, a very average WrestleMania. Overall, for me, it's probably a 2-star WrestleMania, but with a couple of kind of big saving moments.
2 stars is perfect. It's pretty much what I have, and I also have written down here 1/3 magnificence, 2/3 mediocre.
Yeah.
And that, for me, sums up WrestleMania 20, really. That is it for our first ever WrestleMania coverage. I'm sure it won't be our last, ladies and gentlemen, as we delve down the line. I am itching to get my teeth into something like WrestleMania 19 or 17 down the line. Obviously, 17 will be the pinnacle. But, yeah, ultimately, there are great Manias down the road for us. So, Steve Neal, thank you very much for joining me to cover a whopper WrestleMania.
No worries, man. Absolute pleasure. And that means we've got Backlash next. And that means all of the Orton Foley goodness.
I'll tell you, it does have Backlash at Jinder after the roids. Lol. Also, Backlash. I love that laugh. That's brilliant. Oh, dear. A bit like Janice from Friends. Love our obscure references on here. But that shouldn't be obscure. If you Americans don't get that, then you are dead to us. Dead to us. He gave us Donald Trump. What more do you want? Yeah. So, Backlash is next, ladies and gentlemen. So, of course, keep on with the journey with us. If you are watching along, I know a few of us are. A few of you have messaged me and said, oh, yeah, I'll watch that. It's really good fun. Don't hesitate to send in your thoughts. We'll try and cover them as we go. Even if they're a bit later on down the line, we'll try and amalgamate them. Or maybe at the end of the run, we'll put everybody's thoughts together and see what people thought with the year 2004 in general and everything that went with it and their highlights, etc. But nonetheless, Backlash is next. We will continue. We will cover all of 2004. We shall persist on, despite the fact that Donald Trump tried to derail us after just 3 shows. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening to Wrestle Plug. Thank you very much to Steve, as always, for covering Manic Mondays with me, from myself, and of course, Steve, we will catch you very soon for more content from the Wrestle Plug. Take it easy, gang.